That will.
Good morning. This is the rules training for the 2023. I'd like to ask everybody that if you're not speaking, please mute your phones so that we don't get interference. Appreciate you all dialing in today. We have our committee members ready to talk about the rules, but first I'd like to thank our committee members for all the hard work they do. All the people who work on these are volunteers and really appreciate all the hard effort that they put into it. Also want to thank Tiffany. She takes the rules, massages them, puts them over to the MSHA website, and then gets up on there. Also, we have several other people that are behind the scenes that make this thing possible. I'd like to thank Erica Warren. She helps get the word out. Hopefully that helped out. We had probably over 1,000 people notified for this event. And with that, I'd like to turn this over to Kenny Murray, who's the chairman of our Coal Advisory Committee. And Ken, you'll introduce you to the other members of the committee.
Okay, thanks, Jeff. Everybody on here, we appreciate your patience. As I look through my notes from last year, we're only about a week later than we did last year, but there are some contests that are scheduled for the end of March. So we need to get these things, this training done so we can move forward with our 2023 mine rescue season. We're fortunate, like Jeff said, to have the mine rescue subcommittee members online with us today. Chairman is Ron Biggerstaff. Whenever I turn it over to him, I'd ask him to introduce his individual committee members. Jeff said that they're volunteers. Well, many of the guys on the committee, including Ronnie, are actually retired, but their commitment to mine rescue continues. And we're fortunate to have those guys still with our group. These guys, these subject matter experts that you hear from today, they bring, literally hundreds of years of mine rescue experience, not just in contests, but actually in the real mine disasters. So once again, we're fortunate to have these guys provide this training format for us, so we can move forward, train our new guys and retrain our veterans. As you'll see, the previous Q&As that we had from the last year and maybe even the year before have now been rolled into the rules. So the Q&A document at this point is blank, and the rules have reflected the current rules that you'll hear today reflect those previous Q&As. There shouldn't be any local interpretations of any mine rescue rules. If there's any clarifications throughout the year that need done, we should route those through the national committee that we'll be hearing from today. The rules that are posted and that will be presented, or what they call MSHA recognized, and that's a quote right out of 30 CFR Part 49. And you need the MSHA recognized rules in order to get credit for any kind of compliance with Part 49 relative to local contests. So it's important that these rules be followed and implemented for all of our contests as we move through 2023. But before I turn it over to Ronnie, Ray Cartwright is on the phone with us today, or on the WebEx today. And Ray is the new co-director for the from the coal side for the national contest. He's moved up. He's no stranger to mine rescue. He's been around for quite a few years. He's been the field layout chairman over the last many years. Mac Wright, who was our latest co-director, has retired, and Ray stepped into that role. So before we turn it over to Ronnie, Ray, if you wanted to say a few words, we sure appreciate that, and we appreciate your continued support as well.
Yeah, thank you, Kenny. I do appreciate all you guys being on here today, and like Kenny said, we're Well, we're running a little bit late on this year, and hopefully we can get that corrected and get the ship back where it needs to be next year. Um, if you guys got any questions, anything you need to ask us, Brian Thompson is also on here. He's my co-director with me. So anything comes up in the future, you need anything from us, just feel free to email either one of us, and we'll try to get you an answer. If we don't know, we will get you an answer. So again, I just appreciate. Thank you, Penny, for.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Ray. Appreciate it, Ray. With that, we'll, without any further ado, we'll just turn it over to Ronnie Biggerstaff. He's on location in Pikeville, Kentucky today with Joey Salmons, who's one of the key officials from MSHA on our committee. But with that, Ronnie, I'd ask that you go ahead and introduce your committee members that work so hard on getting these rules to where they're at today. So with that, take it away, Ronnie.
All right, thanks, Kenny, and want to welcome everybody to the rules thing. And Tiffany, I had one text where they said they was having trouble getting on. One of them is Lou Mills, that's on our committee.
Oh, okay. I'll reach out.
Okay. Yeah, like Kenny said thanks to a lot of people that I was thinking the same lines, you know, especially people like Ray and the Rules Committee and Kenny and the group. And, you know, like Kenny said, the Q&As have all been implemented into the rules. And then this year, you know, we didn't do a lot of changes. We mainly wanted to clarify and better explain some areas encountered with a local contest. And but I do want to thank our rules group. You know, Wayne Davis, Lou Mills, and Kevin Vaughn have been on it for a long time. And also we've added recently Gary Richardson and Will Altizer, and they both added a lot of to the group. And you know, Lou's helped a lot with the drawings and stuff. And you know, these guys are just kind of priceless for what they do. And we sure welcome them, which Gary and Will is here with me today. And you know, a key thing we want to do to hit on today is when we go through these is keeping the problem designing to the rules and developing problems that can be followed by the rules with and kind of stay away from the gray areas. You know, used to we submitted the problems that they were going to do at the contest and get approved, you know, through MSHA. So now that process, you know, I guess since the COVID thing is that connection is not happening. And so a lot really relies on the problem designers. And a lot of the changes we've had today is on where you get into those gray areas and we have to kind of deal with them with the rules. But the main thing is it would really settle it to make sure, you know, that your problems do follow the rules. And also another thing we want to talk a little bit about today is the written test. And you know, when we made the statements of facts originally, it's what we tried to do was pick out things that mine rescue teams really need to know. And, you know, like for example, explosive mixtures and things that when you walk up on something, you know, is to know what to do in those situations. And a lot of the other stuff, you know, is, you know, going to be handled like from command center. So, but what we did with the statements of fact is we put things there that we thought that teams need to know. And I think in the written test, they've kind of got stretched to where I guess problem designers are wanting to make things different. So for example, if explosive mixture of methane is 5 to 15%, you know, who cares? As long as you know that it's 5 to 15, who cares? Don't put like 5.0 and 5 and FIVE as choices in the written thing, because it's only just trickery and, you know, trying to memorize it. I mean, the main thing is we want them to know these things, but still not let something like that decide a contest and put the contest work and the field work the most important thing. But also taking in consideration that the things we put in the statements of fact are important and they need to know those, but to stay away kind of from the trickery of it. And and we'll discuss those as we go. You know, the main thing to remember when we go through these rules is, on page 1 on the general statement thing, it says the mine rescue rules were designed as a training tool for mine rescue teams. The gas levels, limit, travel distance, water levels, et cetera, were developed for contest purposes only. So, you know, discretion should be used in actual mine emergency situations, you know, like especially, traveling 25 feet or something, that kind of stuff is, remember, you have to put a guidelines to how you judge a contest. So a lot of those things are for contest purposes only. And we know that in actual situations and, that, you know, that we would veer from that. But, Tiffany, I'm ready whenever you're ready to put the rules up.
All righty, I will share them right now.
And what we're going to go through today is we're kind of go through the red lines and discuss, you know, our changes with those. So, when she gets these pulled up there, we'll go to, and I know these page numbers may vary, so I will just, as we scroll through them. Let's see,
Okay, let me go up to the top. Sorry, I was I was working ahead.
make it big, because I'm half blind anyway.
All right. I've got a big old screen, so you have to let me know when it's big enough.
All right, that's great right there.
Where
And
should we
thanks,
go?
Tiffany, for taking care of this.
Sure.
And appreciate what Erica and Stephanie's done with all this too.
Y'all just let me know where to head.
Okay, scroll up to, on down the rules to the first thing that's got a red line, which I know we got some of the dates, but keep scrolling on down. Okay, oh, right there. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to kind of walk through any of the changes that we made, and especially with this time limit, you know, is all the time we really had. They're on Rule 7. Each team will be provided 2 blank maps for working the problems. You know, the maps will not be labeled, and the team will be responsible for labeling the team map and briefing officer's map. Now, we've had troubles in previous contests, and it's really the reason we had to address this is sometimes the judges will actually hand the team the wrong maps, like they'll hand the map man the briefing officer map and vice versa, and we ended up where they mapped the wrong maps. So what we've done this year is the maps won't be labeled, but the judges actually on the field can make sure this happens if at the start that they give them the right maps. And to go on with this rule, failures to identify will result in the discount by Rule 49. And 49 says it's failure to comply with other written adopted national rules covered. So the team's still responsible that the maps are labeled, but we're asking that the field judges should check to see that the maps are identified before the team leaves the field, and if not, mark the map so the map judges can correctly judge the maps. And the judges can actually solve the problem if they'll make sure that the teams mark the maps at the start of the problem to prevent them. Like if I was a judge on the field, when I handed them the maps, I'd say, make sure you identify these, and that way you don't even have a problem with it. And because it'd be a shame for a team to work a perfect problem and then get docked 2 points here because the maps wasn't marked right. And that's where if you're a problem designer and when the judges go to the field, is make sure that they do hand them the right maps. And I would even suggest they go ahead and identify them and mark them. And then that way that you don't even have a problem with the contest. All right, scroll on to the next page. Right there. You know, in the past, we've had the briefing officer and the command center attendant together. Well, now, you know, in the last year rules, we put the briefing officer back in the fresh air base like we used to years ago. And so if you have a command center attendant, you know, he'll be in probably a closed off place like we used to have, where he's kind of isolated and he won't be right there with the briefing officer in the fresh air base. So, under that rule, each team shall have a briefing officer and may choose to have a command center attendant. You know, we have before, like, we had a briefing officer and a command center attendant is, each team will have the briefing officer and also you can have the command center attendant. So if you want to work the problem with just the briefing officer, I guess that's fine, but also you can have both. And moving on down is that the briefing officer's map will be used for scoring purposes unless the team designated the command center map to be scored by checking the box on the lower right-hand corner of the electronic map. And the briefing officer map, and move on down to the next page here. It's got a little more added to it. That's not what I was thinking. Well, I guess we'll get into that in the mapping, but the bottom line is, if you're using the briefing officer's map will be used for scoring purpose unless the team designate the command center attendant's map to be scored. And they'll have a little box there in the right. And when we get up here to the A card, we'll look for some other stuff pertaining to that. Moving on down, let's see, go to the next red line, which would be under the written exam. Okay, I talked a little bit earlier about the written exams. And also we had it in our rules that during isolation, contests, they would administer the written. But we've seen at some of the contests now, they want to do the written like the evening in advance or do it at a different time than during isolation. So to make it to where it's okay either way is we took out the during isolation, just said at a designated time, the contest officials will administer the written exam. And that gives them the freedom of the contest official to do the written at the discretion, according to the contest. So we don't have to necessarily do it, after they're isolated. And what we're wanting to do this year to help with the test written is, let me go on through there with the 5 individual test scores. The 5 team members and the briefing officer will take the test. And the 5 individual test scores with the least amount of discounts will be used to determine cumulative score, the same as it was. The written exam will be 10 statements of fact, taken verbatim from the rules. And each statement shall contain a blank space which should represent a key word with no more than 2 consecutive blanks. Answers will be multiple choice and 3 choices. And answers will not be intentionally misspelled. None of the above will be used as one of the choices. And then we added this, is only one choice will make the statement correct. The other choices will make it incorrect. And don't use choices such as the number 1 and put ONE or 1.0, like I talked about earlier, is which, we want it to where there's only one correct answer. And don't play with the stuff about, you can Google and get 3 things that mean the same word as we're not into memorizing. It's just, the teams need to know the rules, but we're not sitting there trying to memorize how the word's spelled and whatever. But we want it this year, we've added to where out of the 3 choices that there's only one of them that's correct. And the other, that will make it a correct statement. So that'll be a little different, but also we're trying to weed out the nonsense in the written exams, to where you're trying to trick a team instead of them actually knowing the answer. Okay, let's move on down. Another problem that we've had, like contests and stuff is dealing with if the air is short circuited in a fresh air base. And we read here, if the team finds the ventilation short circuited with no indication of air movement in by the fresh air base and have a dotted line map or a solid line map showing openings, they can be assured that either there are no openings in by or that existing openings are isolated from the fresh air base by some means. Now, what we mean by that is that if you get a map and you've got arrows going across the fresh air base like you have air short circuiting across the fresh air base, and it shows, the openings going in the mine, and it might even be a dotted map showing other possible exits or whatever, but there's no air movement shown going in or coming out of the mines, then the team has to assume that if there are openings in by, that they're isolated. And if the fan is operating at the start of the problem, and air is shown going across the fresh air base with the direction arrows and nothing going in or out of the entries or openings, either there are no openings in by or the existing openings are isolated by some means such as airlocks, water roofed, or whatever. So if you're going to put arrows in the fresh air base and nothing going in by or out by, then the team has to assume that area is airlocked from the fresh air base or whatever. So, because that way teams know that under the existing circumstances in the fresh air base with air going through it, that air is not going in by or whatever. So if they change the air back to the fresh air base, then they can't say, hey, it's going in by and whatever if it wasn't on the original thing. So that's just to clarify that, because that has been a concern in the past, with the dotted maps and stuff. Okay, move on up to number 5. The next red line. On verbatim, this has to do with mapping the team map. On the team map, verbatim means the card information on it has to be in sequence, not stacked oriented like the card. It also means that symbols / abbreviations are not accepted to replace words written out on the placard. Like, for example, on the team map has to be verbatim, like if it spells out INCHES, is put exactly what the word says, because you start using abbreviations, then if we start accepting that, then teams want to start abbreviating the word and all that, and it gets to where you really can't read part of it and all that. So that's really to kind of stop that. But also, this does not apply to symbols found in the legend, and I'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to it. Like if you've got and I'll deal with that when we get to the permanent stoppings and temporary stoppings and things like that. But the main thing here is you don't abbreviate, and is not acceptable, and because if we start accepting abbreviations, then that gets into being a nightmare of wanting to, expand that. So. Okay, let's move on to N. And we're talking about the ventilation structures, and ventilation structures found intact, such as permanent or temporary stoppings, barricades, doors, open or closed, etc., that are initially located and mapped will remain on the map, and any removal that's taken both sides down of such structure will be reflected by a notation such as removed. All right, let's kind of back up and look at that a little bit. What we mean by that is, originally, especially when you map, you got to find it how it's found more or less and how you leave it. And I know the judge's map, when they're going to grade the maps, they're going to have what you find originally on that. And also, when a team gets through with the problem, how the captain or a team member will walk the field and they'll mark what's existing up and whatever, and they'll take that plus what's the original map, and that's how they determine on grading the maps, is what was originally found and then what's left on the field. Now, and what we're trying to do here is to clarify this a little better, that if you have a permanent stopping, for example, and you take both sides down, say you're going to remove that and move it somewhere else for a ventilation and whatever. And once you take the both sides down, you need to show that that was removed. And that's been in the rule. That's not really changed. We're just clarifying that when it's been removed, that means you've took both sides down. Now, if you rebuild it in the same location, say you got another ventilation and you're going to come back later and build it back, then it will be shown as a temporary stopping on the team's map. You'd show it as a team built stopping. Now, any partial removal, that's like taking down one side. Say you're going to airlock and go through a barricade, for example, and you only take one side down, and then you go through and you build that back. And the symbol alone is all that's required for the team map. And we'll read that the whole statement there. Any partial removal, that's taking down one side down. That's like you're airlocking and only take one side down of a ventilation structure found intact, and at some point put it back up. The symbol alone is all that is required on the team map, unless descriptive conditions are indicated on the placard. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. But so if you take both sides down and you're going to move it, take both sides down, then then you'd show it removed. You come back and build there, then you would put one line for a temporary stopping. And then any partial removal taking it down, all you would do is show the existing symbol. And then if it's removed at the end, then it's removed, or if it's built back, then it's up, or built. Tiffany, we've got a text somebody sent in saying that people can't join the meeting by the phone. I have a couple of texts.
Yeah, hey, Ronnie, before you move on, would you clarify what the captain has to do in these situations on the rebuilds and temporaries?
I think he's talking all about probably protest and D9.
Well, naturally, you DNI them, but if you're going to just take the one side down and put the side back up, you're not, if you take both sides down, and then now I'm going to come back and build that temporary, then you would take a roof and rib test, because now you're erecting a temporary or permanent stopping, and you would DNI that too.
So taking one side down and putting it back up, nothing else is required?
No. What if it's already built? What kind of concern me now about all this is about people who can't join the meeting by the phone. I don't know, what do you think, Kenny, we ought to do with that?
I'm fixing the issue with the code right now.
Okay.
Yep, I'm sending it over, and I'll ask Weiss to update it on the website.
Okay, we're back. Joey had a pretty good recommendation here too, is as when the judge walks, when the problem's over and the judge walks the field with the team to assure what's up and down and what ventilation structures are up, is to make sure that if it was a permanent stop and built back, or say it was permanent stop and it was up or down, or whether it was a team built stopping, that the judge ought to clarify that on that little map that he does when he walks with the team, so that the map judges understand what was actually there or not, on the final vent map, I guess is what we call it. Okay, let's see. All right, let's move on down to the next one, Tiffany. Either. And what we did here, this is on the briefing officer map, so it kind of goes in line with what I just discussed was with the team map. And so this is under the part dealing with the briefing officer map. Ventilation structures found intact such as permanent, temporary stoppings, barricades, doors, posts that are initially located in map will remain on the map. Any removal taking both sides down, such structure will be reflected by a notation such as removed, and then if rebuilt in the same location, be shown as temporary stopping. This is exactly what I said there on the team map. In any partial removal, taking down one side of the ventilation structure found intact, and at some point put it back. The symbol alone is all that's required by the BO map or command center map, unless descriptive conditions are indicated on the placard.
So I guess, Ronnie, you'd have to be very careful about taking down a permanent stopping and moving it and putting it on your map and putting it down, then coming back and building a temporary, which would call for another single line, which would be 3 lines. The determination on which is down and which is up.
Yeah, and we've talked about that too, Kenny, and like if you had, same way if you had a seal and then, you had to breach the seal, then you come back and build a temporary, I mean, you end up with 4 lines or you end up with, but I guess the biggest thing is to show that, it's trying to get the determination of when is it actually all the way down, and if you're going to take it and move it somewhere else and then come back and now you're building a whole new temporary stopping because everything was torn down, completely down is, that's the best way we could do to do it. I guess that's where really on the field, the judges could really help in that process of saying, well, okay, they tore this down. Now they come back and built this one and they can help the map judges as they draw the sketch out of what's left and that kind of thing too.
Plus Ronnie, for the teams, this is Lou, for the teams, they don't have to put that within 6 feet of tolerance. I mean, the map judge don't know where, so they need to put that far enough away from where that permanent stopping symbol was to where it's clearly a different symbol.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true.
The map judge just knows that there's a temporary stopping building that crosscut. He can't judge that on 6 foot tolerance. So teams need to put that far enough away to where it don't look like a permanent stopping or like a seal.
Yeah, that's true.
We have a question in the chat as well. It says, what if you take one side down and leave it down? How is it mapped?
It's mapped
down or
it's mapped as intake stopping that's down, or you just put right down beside the stopping beside the symbol.
Okay, thank you.
and let's see. What's that? Somebody asked what the new web code was there.
Oh, yes. I did put it in the chat. It's 1993310247 and then pound. And we did get it updated on the website as well.
Can you repeat that?
Sure. Yeah. It's 1993310247. And then you'll hit pound after that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's see. Let's move on down to number 7 there. Okay, getting back to the command center attendant and briefing officer things that each team may have a command center attendant who will accompany only one team and remain in lockup, say it's always being and moving dances. The attendant will use the computer located at a designated command center location. And we just marked out with the briefing officer because he won't be with the briefing officer now that we put him back to Fresh Air Base. And also, each team shall have a briefing officer and may choose to have a command center attendant. If only the briefing officer is used, he can use either the electronic or the manual mapping. But you do have to have the briefing officer and the command center attendant, that's optional. Ray, if you're on there, y'all have to, I guess that pertains to the Nationals.
If they're gonna use Visio, the teams will have to bring their own computer.
Teams will have to provide their own computer, what Ray said. All right.
We've only ever provided the SD card.
Yeah. Okay, looking at Rule 48. You know, we've had problems, and it's mainly been in the problem designing on, say you get up to the back of the mine and you have an area of where it's cut into old works and there'll be a card that says top working or, like impassable and getting into all these different terminologies. It'll say not bolted and, you know, and they're saying, well, just because it don't say unsafe roof means that teams can go on and, you know, we're trying to stop this trickery of it all. And, so what we're doing is putting in the rules that, you know, it's really not, we had it in rules about being impassable, but we don't really define impassable. So we do define inaccessible. And so what we're doing, we're changing this rule to where it said this would, the rule is any act by a team member that violates the intent of the problem design layout. And A says this would include traveling into or passing materials through areas indicated to be, we change it to inaccessible by placards or intended to be inaccessible by the physical condition indicated. An example of such areas would include, but not limited to, caved areas, ribs, faces, water roofed, etc. And what we're doing, what we're saying is that if a problem designer don't want you to go in there, he ought to block, they need to block it with these things mentioned in our legend that stop you, like caved areas, and what we're going to do is let's go back to inaccessible and we'll define inaccessible. And that's on page 38, back on Rule 44. Let's go back to 44. And that one. There where it says inaccessible. And we didn't change anything in here that the definition of inaccessible is all areas of the mine where team travel is blocked by one or more of the following conditions. That's seals, unsafe roof rib to rib, inextinguishable fires, water over knee deep, caved areas, and cut into old works. Other terms such as not bolted or unsupported top, etc., should not be used only if the conditions used in the legend. So if you want it, so we couldn't define what's impassable, but we are defining what's inaccessible. So if the team's not supposed to go in there, is you need to put something that what's inaccessible there, and we just wanted to define that since we hadn't never defined what impassable is, because there was stuff thrown into problem designing and trying to trick teams, and that's not what we're out here to do. Okay, so moving on now to the next thing. There is one drawing that's been a problem getting posted, and that's figure 7. I think with the format of it and I know we've tried to put it online a couple times. It looks good now there. It's been corrected, right?
Yes.
Kissy? Okay. On the original versions, I think where the trouble was putting the caved areas and water over knee deep and that kind of stuff. So that drawing has really not changed. It's the same. It's always been showing with the team stops. It's just what messed up on the drawings, getting it put over in this other format or whatever. It was the caves and the water over knee deeps and stuff, and the cross cuts were off. And so this is the corrected version of it. So it just shows the proper procedure on team stop, especially if you go all the way up to the third cross cut to team stop 3, and you come across the 4 is, if you come across, then you got to go out by. And so if you go back out to team stop 5, and then as you're coming back, now you're working, and that open cross cut makes you go over to team stop 6, come down to 7, over to 8. And then when you go back up to team stop 4, then you'll go over and make the team stop 5 to the right there. But it's all about tying across and behind, but that drawing was messed up. Nothing's changed from what it was from the previous year, but we just wanted to put a little emphasis there in case you saw that drawing and it was a little messed up. Or over on the next page, get into the mind map legend. The symbols found in the legend, we added this. The symbols found in the legend shall be used in lieu of the wording on the placard by the symbol. Any additional information found on the placard must be written on the maps. What we were finding was, like, say if they had a card that said, for example, permanent stopping, and put intact or airtight or whatever on it, is they were getting docked because they wasn't putting intact or airtight. So what we done was we just added that to the symbol. Like if it says permanent stopping, intact or airtight, the stopping alone, the symbol alone would stand for that. Now, if it said permanent stopping, leaking, block out, whatever, now that information has to be added to that symbol. But I guess if it's not, well, let me take that back. I guess if it would be permanent stopping, not intact, then it would show maybe leaking or something like that. But if it just said permanent stopping, intact, airtight, or not intact, not airtight, that you would mainly just use the symbol. But any additional information you would have to say, like, blown up, like blown apart or this kind of stuff, you would put whatever, but it's kind of tricking the team and the map man, because if it said permanent stopping, intact or airtight, that symbol should suffice for it. And
Sorry, we have a question in the chat.
Yeah.
Can the placard just say permanent or temporary stopping and be assumed intact and airtight?
If it says permanent stopping, then, and nothing else indicated, then it's considered airtight. And if it says temporary stopping and don't say anything else, then it's considered to be airtight.
All right.
But that's
thank you.
where the problem designing, we don't want to get into where we're trying to get map docs and whatever. It ought to be clear if it's a stopping that's leaking or partially down or whatever, is make sure it's something legit, not just something where you're trying to trick a team on mapping. Okay, moving on over. What we did years ago, we set up some groups of 50 statements of facts. And what we originally done was, like, every 2 years, we would rotate 50 of those in with and leave 50. And so we haven't done that in a while. So we took 50. These 50 that we put in, 1 through 50, they've been used in the past. So if you're an old mine rescue guy, you've seen these already before. And we wanted to rotate these around because where we're only putting 100 statements in there, is we wanted to make sure that we keep feeding these because a lot of these that we've added are very important, you know, in mine rescue work and for teams, especially when you get into stuff about the specific gravities and explosive limits and things like that. And so the first 50 are 50 of our older statements that we've already had. And then when we looked at then 51 through 100 are ones that you had on already using last year. And we did see that number 94 was a duplicate. So we did change that one because we had the lower explosive limit of hydrogen 4%. We already had that in one of these other statements. So we just added the one on the IDLH carbon monoxide, 1,200 parts per million. So that's a new change, but the rest of those are the last 50, other than that one, but all the ones you already had listed. Same as number 29. Okay. Yeah, when we added these new ones, number 28 was the same one we had for 94, so we just added that, changed 94. But that's pretty well the changes I have. That's what we have here. And what, like I said, we didn't want to get into more Q&As and all that, and we just, you know, everything that's been added with the Q&As, and so we just wanted to mainly clarify some stuff and try to deal with some of the problem designing and you know, I encourage the problem designers to when they do the problems now that you're not submitting them to MSHA is make sure that, you know, they do follow the rules, and if you get to a contest and something that's messed up and whatever, is do what's right. And you know, because these teams work hard and they train hard, and I know I've been involved with a lot with training through the years, and you know, you don't want a contest decision of placing, and especially when you get into nationals and stuff, is you don't want national champion decided on a technicality or something that's thrown in there that was kind of trickery and not something just straight out with the rules. Just keep it in the lines, and hope we have good contests and good participation. The teams learn a lot, good camaraderie, and in the long run, we do what's right with it.
We have another question in the chat. Where can we send a diagram to be reviewed for a question?
Kenny, are you on there? Where you know, we didn't want to get into new questions and all that. What do you think we need to do? Because we don't.
Can they ask the question verbally? We can address it with the group still on the call.
I think they asked in the chat room if they could send in a sketch for. You know,
Hey, Tiffany, are you able to accept an email? To
Yeah,
where you could
That's fine.
take that?
Yeah, Josh, you can send it to me. I'll put my email in the chat.
I think it's better if we could, while we have everybody online, to address these.
Sorry, Barry. Forgot I still had it on private mode.
you know, the only bad thing about this, you know, when you're answering questions here and you got other guys that are not online and you know, is
Yeah.
I don't like doing interpretations, and it's not fair to everybody, you know,
Right.
that's not on the lines.
Yeah,
As you get in, and this may decide a contest down the road because they didn't get the interpretation that we're doing here, and that's where we really kind of try to stay away from the Q&As. I mean, once we had all the other Q&As, we really didn't change any rules other than trying to clarify what we wanted and with the problem design and stuff.
And then we have the question, did I hear that mine rescue contest problems are not approved by MSHA any longer?
Right, Ray?
That'd be a Ray question.
Yep, my understanding that was taken out. Taken out of the rule.
Yeah, it was taken out last year or in last nationals rules.
If you keep in mind, like I stated earlier, back to that, that phrase that we have on there that's in the rules and, or not rules, but in regulation, it says that the contest have to be designed around MSHA recognized rules. So whether they approve it or not, these rules have to be followed in order for it to be a bona fide Part 49 mine rescue contest.
And, you know, we apologize too about where it's kind of late getting posted with these changes the statements of facts, but just, you know, the way the procedure works, I guess that's what we is, so.
Well, you know, we talked earlier, Ronnie, about probably getting together before the end of the year to start drafting the rules for 2024, since it's a national year, and potentially having the rules meeting like we're having today back in Beckley, like we did before COVID, pre-COVID. Have the actual face-to-face meeting in Beckley and then broadcast it via WebEx to those who can't attend in person. I think we get a whole lot more value when you have the committees on the stage and able to address things like this. You know, just take a break and go in the cafeteria, sit at the table and talk about it, and then come back online. So we'll try to do that in preparation for the 2024 national contest.
Yeah, and that's good when we could say, take all the, look at, you know, maybe doing that around October or so at the end of the year, and that way things can kind of get posted, you know, before, over the winter where teams practice and stuff like that. It's hard to kind of get it late like this, but, yeah, that would really help. But like Kenny said, you know, we're used to doing this presentation at Beckley, and we're all in an auditorium, and we can stand there and talk back and forth. We can go out to the table and get together as a group and go ahead and decide decisions and answer all the questions and stuff. It's so much easier when we're sitting there as a group, and it's this right here kind of, it's a tough way to do this, you know, and where you can't see face to face.
Plus, we operate better on a full stomach with the academy cafeteria right there.
Yeah. Here's my
Okay, so we have the diagram here. All right, we're getting a couple more questions. Are we doing the questions? Are we not doing questions?
Why don't we do this, Kenny? Let them submit this stuff where we're not all together as a group. Like, I know not all the rules committees together, and, you know, and then here we start doing these interpretations. Some people are gonna get it, some are not. And, you know, and you got a situation here, you got a guy, he's in water, you know, we just need to talk about this kind of conditions, because, you know, you got a guy in water roof. I don't think he's gonna be hollering, you know, but, and that would be a pretty poor problem design if you got a guy like that, you know, if he's in water roof, but, then I know you get in all these, then you get all these scenarios of what if he's in by a water route and he's in dry area, and you get into all these what ifs. If you start discussing this just without sketches and without everybody getting this information, once we make a determination, I think we're kind of going in the wrong direction, you know, by just trying to do these things, you know, you're off the cuff and we don't have the team together, and that's where we get into sometimes the wrong way, getting different interpretations, and some get them, some don't, and it might decide, you know, how a team does in a contest. It would be a lot better to, like we had them before, where they're all structured and we answered them, and that kind of thing. And,
Hey, why don't we do this, since they have Tiffany's email, and Tiffany, if you don't mind, any questions or, interpretations, if you could email them to Tiffany. So she has them all in one location. And then once you get those, if you could send it to Ray, Ronnie, and myself, then we can
Mhm.
convene that group, take a look at them, and then we can email the answers or interpretations out to this entire group in the
Sure,
next week or so.
that
How about that,
works.
Ronnie? Is that okay,
And-
Ronnie?
yeah, that would, and, yeah, we definitely want it where it's all in one little document and it's answered together and everybody has access to that. It's, because that's where we get in kind of trouble sometimes when you start giving opinions and whatever without the whole committee sitting down together and looking at all the ins and outs and everybody having an answer to it. One thing that's been asked too is about the problems down the road with the radios. Having access and, where they're phasing out some of these, the different brands and all that. I know Ray, me and you've talked about it too, and Kenny is, I guess at some point we have to kind of see where we're going with all that too, because now they're having trouble finding certain radios and that kind of stuff. That's something down the road, it's going to have to be dealt with here, and probably pretty quick. And somebody texted me about that too, bringing that up. So, that is a concern.
And again, for folks who didn't see it in the chat, my email address is Blair, BLAIR .Tiffany, TIFFANY @DOL.gov.
Kenny, you or Jeff want to take back over, or you got any questions? Or
No, I don't have any questions. Again, thanks a lot for all your work on this. And if we can do what Kenny suggested, we could either email them out or put them up on one of the websites. I think if there's any remaining questions. I had one question about the radios. Which radios are being phased out?
What? Chris, are you on there?
Yeah, I'm on here, Ronnie. To answer your question, Jeff, Motorola and Kenwood both have quit making their MSHA approved radios.
Wow.
And see what you're getting into now, they've quit making the batteries too. So teams are already having to buy batteries from third parties that technically are not MSHA approved. And, those are kind of sliding by in the contests, as well as the unapproved earpieces and mics and everything else. So I don't know. I was hoping we could address that quickly, but maybe not.
Yeah, I think if again you can get people in the committee together and address that, I think we can get that word out to all the teams too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important as far as the big picture and where we're going down the road, but also immediately, I think it's kind of punishing the ones that are sticking strictly to the rules and using only MSHA approved parts. And it's an advantage for those that, like I said, that are not adhering strictly to the rules.
Yeah, I agree.
I could see too a big problem, especially with these newer teams and companies starting new teams. Is like the older teams have probably had access to extra radios and stuff with their different operations shutting down and things like that. But it is hard to get started from scratch when you can't get access to them. I think it's that's a big factor, I think, with this.
And I know I'd spoken to a couple of people, Ronnie, but I hadn't spoken to you directly. But one reason that when I mentioned it, I threw out the intrinsically safe portion is in the shopping that I've been doing. If you're looking at those kind of radios, you're sure to get something that's programmable to the same frequencies that we're already using and everything. So we don't have, every, hunting CB radio, everything coming and going, showing up at a contest, and we can't control the communications.
This won't help us, I don't think this year, but maybe for the national. There's a rewrite of a regulation that's on the books that hasn't been released or put out for final version yet. It's 30 CFR Part 18. Once that's released, that should answer some of these questions on batteries that aren't part of an exact MSHA approval. We have batteries throughout the industry, fire suppression, proximity detection, locators, that kind of thing. That this Part 18, once it's released, it'll address some of those, even the supply chain shortages and things of that nature. Hopefully this gives us a little bit of relief coming down, at least in 2024. But I think that'll help us.
Hey,
Okay.
Tiffany, if you don't care, add that question you had earlier, or one or two of those that we really kind of answered. Just put those in that too, to make sure we get a good response back to everybody.
Sure, no problem.
All right, thanks. Appreciate it.
Hey, Ronnie, in case you didn't realize that was an advertisement for you to call your local congressman.
Yeah.
Okay, do you have any other questions or concerns we could answer right now? Except for interpretation.
Ray, anything that you think we need to add, or?
No, I don't have anything else, Ronnie. Thank you.
All right, well, thanks everyone for helping out. Ronnie, Ray, Kenny, appreciate it. Tiffany, thanks a lot. And next session will be 1 o'clock for mental, non-mental mine rescue.
Thank you, Jim.
Nicely done, Ronnie. Thank you.
Thank you, bud.
All right, I will stop recording. We'll see everyone this afternoon, East Coast time.
Hey, Tiffany, can I ask a question?
Well, sure.
Are you going to repost this training? Link to
Yes.
the- Okay,
Yeah, I'll edit it up and put it on the YouTube channel that we have, and then I'll post it to the web page where all the documents are.
excellent. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Tiffany. Much appreciated.
No problem.
Thanks, Tiffany.
Yeah, thanks.
Tiffany, that access number is good for the rest of the sessions.
Yes, we'll be using the same WebEx link and the same phone number and access code for the duration. So
Real good. Okay, well, thanks a lot.
no problem.
Hey, Tiffany,
Yes.
will this stay live? Can we just leave them on if we are? Or do we need to come back?
That's fine. I'll go ahead and leave it up. I'll just stop the recording.